All right, everyone. Welcome to the first ASRG webinar of 2022 and the return of the ASRG webinar series. My name is John Heldreth. I'm the founder of the Automotive Security Research Group, or ASRG. I'm happy to announce that the webinars are back, and we will be providing new webinars every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central European Time. For those joining from the US, it's 12 noon, right in time for lunch. And on the West Coast, 9 a.m. for breakfast. If you're in India, it's around 10:30 in the evening, directly before you go to bed. Perfect, right? I'm sure you get the point. Anyways, we've changed the concept a little bit this year to try and improve the quality and content that ASRG brings to the community. The webinars are no longer live. So right now we're not live. Well, maybe? No, we're not live, which means that we won't have any surveys or question and answers at the beginning or ending of the webinars. Webinars will focus on the latest and greatest topics of the industry. For those who want to have a little bit more interactive experience, we will have some different things coming soon. I don't want to spoil everything, but we will have maybe some interviews, maybe some fireside chats with professionals, maybe even some more interesting non-professional chats regarding automotive security. So all of this coming to you soon from ASRG. Today's presentation is going to be a little bit different format. I got the guys from Itemis here, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's one of my favorites: risk assessment and the management of threats. Since I absolutely love this topic, I asked Jonathan and Basti, say hi, guys.
Hi.
Should I say hi? Hi, hi.
There you go. I asked these guys if I could be a part of the webinar. I'm sure they were just being nice when they agreed, but now I get to be a part of a webinar. Yeah, I know. I'm also a little worried, but let's see how this goes. It should be fun.
Better be.
Anyways, first of all, I'm going to be upfront with everyone. Itemis is a sponsor of ASRG. Yes, they do give money and resources to support the automotive security industry. I want to be clear here. Sponsors do not have access to ASRG member data or influence decision-making of ASRG on any level. They support the same goals that we at ASRG have and want to promote, well, of course, their products and services, but also a more secure vehicle. Not only Itemis, but almost all the companies who've developed tools, technologies, processes, and so on, they're also trying to support a more secure vehicle. And what we are going to present today is something I think that will be so helpful for the entire industry. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands the nature of the relationship between ASRG and Itemis. But this is pretty cool stuff. And we've developed it together with Itemis, and I'm pretty excited about how this will change the industry for good. So Basti, next slide, please.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So enough of that. Let's get on to the good stuff. Jonathan, Basti, you guys still awake?
We are still awake, John. And we weren't just being nice. It is actually a pleasure to present here today in this webinar with you, John, and with ASRG. So yeah, today's presentation, as you see, is titled Community-Driven Threat Catalog, Reusability Ratings for ISO SAE 21434. And we are very excited to present this topic. John is with us, obviously, has already introduced himself. Bastian Crook is the development lead at Itemis AG, and then myself. Next slide, please, Basti.
Yeah, sure.
So again, my name is Jonathan Mooring. I'm the head of US operations for Itemis. We just started operations here in the US, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Basti?
Yeah, that's. I would say I'm not the development lead of Itemis. I would rather say I am a development lead at Itemis of the team that is working on a Terra tool, which we're going to have some touch points with today. So yeah, maybe that much about me.
Okay. So John, we heard from you at the beginning. Anything else you'd like to add? You are the founder of ASRG.
No, nothing to add here. But I think it's pretty important to ask the question, who is Itemis? If you guys both work for Itemis, right?
Yeah. So next slide, please, Basti. Right. So I'll spend a couple minutes explaining exactly that, answering exactly that question. Who is Itemis? Itemis was founded in 2003. It's headquartered in Lünen, Germany, right next to Dortmund. We have about more than 200 employees now, and we're growing very rapidly. In fact, this last year, we grew at the fastest rate since the founding. We have about 20 locations worldwide, the newest location of which is located in the US in Chicago. Have a lot of customers, over 300 in the last 5 years, and that is increasing every year. And we have about over 20 million in revenue. We serve a variety of industries. The main focus, or a high percentage of our customers, are automotive customers. As you can see on the slide towards the bottom, we do have a very strong focus on model-based systems engineering, and you'll see that reflected in our products that we offer. We do offer about 80% services and about 20% products. So 80% of our business is services, 20% is product related. You may have seen some of our products within the named under the Yakindu title. So our products are part of a Yakindu IoT tool suite. And the most relevant tool here for our discussion would be our security analyst tool. And you'll get to see a little more of that in the demos from Basti later on. If we want to focus on services, we offer services in 3 main areas. We offer services in the area of advanced engineering. So there we focus on domain-specific languages and low-code solutions. We also offer services in the area of cloud and enterprise. And there you're looking at front and back end implementations, digitalization of processes. And finally, we offer services in the area of IoT, which is, as you all surely know, a very fast growing area. IoT, IIoT, which is Industrial Internet of Things, smart homes, over-the-air applications, things like that. So those are the services we offer. Back to ASRG, we've been working with ASRG for some time, my colleagues and I. And in 2021, we became an official sponsor to ASRG. And we are very, very excited to see what 2022 will bring. So I think we can move to the next slide and we can have a look at what we will be talking about today. So we'd like to present 4 main points to you all today. And we'll start with number 1, the challenge in assessing risks. So here we'll take you briefly through a Terra risk assessment process just to refresh some of the process steps and technologies that are used in, for example, ISO SAE 21434. Then we'll look at where we see some of the current challenges with assessing those cyber risks within automotive. Yeah, that will cover the first point. Then in the second point, we'll look at a potential solution, namely the community-driven threat catalog, and we'll look at how we think that solution can help with some of those challenges in the automotive industry. Then after that, we're going to see some very cool demos from Basti that are where we'll show you how to use, how to contribute to, and how to update the threat catalog. And finally, we'll talk about the future. We'll talk about some ideas for the future in regards to catalogs and in regards to risk management in general. Okay, so with that, let's move on to the next slide, which is an overview of the Terra process.
Maybe we should mention, I'm moving the laser pointer here. I'm trying to follow along with you.
Yeah,
That's sort of a fun task for me.
you're doing a great job, Basti.
I'm the laser pointer pilot today.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, all right. So this is a very high-level overview of a Terra process, and we're going to move in the description from left to right through the Terra process. So if we start on the left-hand side, we have the step of item definition, and this is essentially the step in which we define our vehicle systems, our subsystems, in terms of the various terms mentioned here, in terms of functions, in terms of data, components, channels, and data flows. An item is essentially the focus of a Terra. So we typically would do a Terra for a specific item, and how that item is defined is really up to whoever is creating the Terra and deciding how that system or subsystem should be broken up. Yeah. So that's really the first step in the Terra overview process.
Jonathan,
so,
just don't forget that we have to identify also in this step the relationship between the different items. Yeah. So if we're doing a system or a function,
yep.
You have to define all of these different
interrelationships. Okay. Dependencies.
So like what data is actually stored in this component? These kind of things, you mean, huh?
Good point. Okay. Right, and the next, so that's very high level, very quickly what item definition means and what it is. And then we can move over to the block of identifying the damage scenarios. So in this case, we define from our item definition what we consider to be an asset, what is relevant. We combine that asset with the so-called security property. Security properties, I'm sure you all know, can be, depending on how you define as security properties, confidentiality, integrity, or availability, for example. And when we combine an asset with a security property, we end up with a security objective. One example here would be that an asset could be a function. The function could be turning our headlights on and off. And the security property that we would want to have connected to that would be having that function be available at all times. And the security objective could be to ensure that that function is available at all times to prevent any potential damage scenario. And that's what brings us over to the idea of damage scenarios. So this damage scenario is really asking us the question, what happens if that function is not ensured? What happens if in the middle of the night my headlights decide to be turned off and it's dark outside? What types of damages may be incurred, not only to the actual, let's say, driver of the car, but potentially also to the company that manufactures the vehicle. Potentially, there's also, not only a loss of life from the driver of the vehicle, which is horrible, but also there could be a serious damage to the reputation of the company. So these types of things are defined within the damage scenario. And this leads us to then the overall impacts. And the impact, with the impact, we're really answering the question, okay, how bad, how bad is it if this damage scenario actually would occur? Yeah.
And Jonathan,
you go first.
I like to always say that this is the translation from the system, the diagram, whatever we've defined as our system or what's in scope.
Yep.
This is the translation from a technical perspective into a business relevant or risk level perspective.
Good point, John.
Yep. And that's what the 21434, the ISO has called also impact rating and impact determination. That's what you just described, right?
Yep.
I see.
Yep. Okay. So that was the identification of the damage scenario. So let's move now down below that to the threat analysis area. So here we're really, so now we've defined we've defined a certain architecture. We have certain technologies within that architecture, and these technologies are going to be potentially vulnerable to certain threats, and those threats can be listed here, potentially within, for example, a threat catalog. And in order to mitigate those threats, we will apply certain type of controls. And when we take the threat, the feasibility of a certain threat, and we apply a control to mitigate that threat actually occurring, we end up with the feasibility that attack can actually occur. So
the feasibility even gets reduced then, you mean? Like,
correct. So
yeah.
Attack feasibility is really answering the question, how likely is it that this threat, even considering the controls we applied, will occur as related to the specific technology? Yeah. So now we can see if we move to the right under Analyze Risks, and we combine our impact, where we have the question, well, how bad is it if this damage scenario takes place, with the question of how likely is it that this threat would lead to this type of damage scenario. When we combine those two, this yields our overall risk level as related to the specific item that we considered for this Terra. Yeah. And again, a system will consist of many items. Yeah. And so we can, if you think about a security engineer having to do Terras like this, a security engineer will typically run through this process for various items in various phases of development. When the system architecture is modified, he'll run through it again. When the threat landscape changes, he'll run through it again. Or potentially when a new vulnerability is detected. So this process will be executed over and over again throughout the development cycle of a vehicle, and also after the vehicle is in the field and in the hands of the customer. Anything to add, guys?
I like the idea of calling these sort of separate Terra projects where we have so many of them, one for each item. Yeah, that's really an issue, because there's going to be plenty of them. Yeah.
Yep.
And you mentioned also that these are like, models, right? These are defining a certain system. These need to be able to be dynamically evaluated. And also, I think you also need to have different levels. We have functions, data, components, all these different types of items on the left-hand side. Actually, in the future, I think we can have a hierarchy also with risk assessments, right? On different levels. Suppliers could provide these different, their own risk assessments with the same variables, just like we do for FMEA, right?
Oh yeah,
Right.
for sure. All these Terra projects in the end need to be integrated into one big analysis for the whole vehicle. That's what the 2144 really also demands, right? That's not just our idea.
Product level, right?
Yep.
And in product level or even end to end. And I mean, you can discuss this end to end argument for days, but when that we can plug in different risk assessments, have a hierarchy, build a complete vehicle model based on different item risk assessments. I think this is really powerful and what we will need for the future to really maintain and manage all of these changes, product variation, and so on.
But that's also a lot of data and a really big model. If you connect all the projects,
that's a lot of data.
Giving me a lot of headache, to be honest.
This is only a challenge, right?
Yes, and I will grow with it, of course.
Okay, all right. So that was the general overview, guys. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So yeah, so today in today's discussion, we'll really be focusing on the area of the threats and the threat catalog. So I think we can go to the next slide. But here I think it's important to understand, you know, why do we think we need this type of threat catalog? And so I'm going to pose this question to John. You know, we looked at the overall Terra process. We looked just now very quickly and at a high level at the steps involved in assessing a cybersecurity risk within automotive. So maybe John, you know, you've been in the dealing with cybersecurity for some time, and you've have a lot of experience with other customers through leading ASRG and through all the networking and sharing that's been going on. Why do you think we need something like this, and how could it help us deal with some of the challenges? And maybe first of all, what are the challenges that you see in the industry at the moment?
Yeah, so Jonathan, thanks for the question. Of course, it's definitely not so easy to answer. We have to understand risk. This is always our challenge, right? Understand risk on different levels so that we can make great decisions, or the best decisions at that particular point in time with the information that we have, to make more secure products, right? Or to reduce risk in the field, make sure our customers are protected, and so on. And some of the problems that we do have, not only on the threat catalog, but also on the risk assessment side, is, you know, every company, every person, every identity has their own opinion. They have their own viewpoint. They have their own competency and experience, which is going to play into ultimately someone making an evaluation about feasibility, right? And we always try to reduce this amount of inaccuracy, or, you know, the point here is, if you have one person do a risk assessment and you have another person do a risk assessment, they should be able to come up with the same results, right? Repeatability, reproducibility. And unfortunately, that's not the case because we're all human, right? So we try to reduce or remove the human part of risk assessment out of that, but we still have this issue with feasibility ratings, right? There's no consistency, right? There's no way to really say, if this happens, then it's this. We can put frameworks and guidelines around it and try to describe it as much as possible, but just not going to always be the same. First point. Difficult to ensure all threats are considered. Well, you know, we do our best to try and think about every possibility of which threats need to be considered. But we're not always going to have every threat in mind. We don't know every threat, actually. It's all of the threats that we don't know are the ones that are usually being exploited in the wild, right? But how do you ensure that all the threats are considered? It's not possible. So what we try to do is at least give us a framework so that we can, a checklist or something that we can go through and continuously improve, right? The low quality of Terra is due to lacking experience, varying perspectives. We said this a little bit at the first point. Think about, turnover of resources, different people making the same assessments, different people having different experiences or competencies. So you're just going to get different viewpoints. You're going to get different, a low level of reproducibility here.
Mm-hmm.
Then high Terra effort for companies without any baseline threats. This is a new process. Terras take time. We're talking maybe a week or two. I don't really know, depending on which part, component, function, vehicle, whatever it might be. But these really take time right now. And what we're the idea here is to reduce any type of additional effort there.
Mm-hmm. That's already a hint on our solution, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
If you, yeah, I got that. I got you on this one. So it means right now, if I have a similar attack step in multiple terras or multiple on different items, I would still need to rethink about the feasibility rating for this attack step, even if it's the sort of, from attacker's point of view, the very same kind of attack. Just one time I do Bluetooth spoofing on one device and the other time on another device, but in both places I would do Bluetooth spoofing. That's what you mean,
right? That's right.
Yeah. I see.
Okay, then next point, onboarding of cybersecurity talent. As you probably are very well aware of, there's a very small amount of people that can do automotive security and cybersecurity, or automotive products and cybersecurity. So it takes a lot of time either to understand the IT security side of automotive products or to understand the automotive product and its IT security relevant attributes. So it takes a long time for people to get on board, to understand all of the different aspects of cybersecurity in vehicles, which vehicles are a fun little product development as they are alone without cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. So that's also one point. Threats need to be current. Every day we have new threats.
Also today?
Well, today and yesterday, even tomorrow, I can guarantee it.
Okay.
So the point here is it always needs to be continuously updated. Today is already expired, right? Mm-hmm. Managing the complexity of a changing product. Well, a few years ago, it was much easier. Automotive products, you develop and design a vehicle, you send it out into the world, you sell it, and it doesn't change. But now, software updates, running changes. We have this complete dynamic environment that the product itself, meaning these items, are changing constantly. So this is another challenge that we have. And we always need to think about what risk we have in the field at every minute, right? How do I make decisions about risk of vehicles in the field? How can I, as a manager, how can I, as a person, say that this risk is acceptable? Well, the first step in that is to identify the risk of not only a single product in the design environment, but also afterwards, after the production start after the vehicles have been sold, how does someone make decisions when they don't have updated risk assessments? And currently risk assessments are taking some time, but we need to get this process down to less than a minute where we can understand risk almost in a real time. So more to come on that later. I don't want to spoil the rest of the presentation, but Basti, let's go to the next slide here.
Sure.
Yeah.
So going back to the overview of the Terra here, and we started thinking about where we could, ASRG, where we could help support this process.
But not all of the challenges that you said right now, right? Otherwise, that would be really depressing for me.
Unfortunately, we can't solve everything. But one area that we did identify where we can support is this threat catalog. And so this threat catalog is something that every company needs to do, right? So you see OEMs or suppliers or even everybody in the supply chain is having to develop threat catalogs or threats kind of databases. And we thought, well, it probably makes sense that we as a community have a common threat catalog that can be used as a basis for risk assessments. It's not going to.
So that's the part of the challenge where we would be capable of starting to address all this or all these ideas, right?
This is the first step, right? And this is, I think, what we would call low-hanging fruit, right? Where we can step into the process as a community, organization, nonprofit, where we can provide information that would help reduce the effort in companies, but also to increase the quality, right?
So that if the solution is the community-driven threat catalog, then
right.
yeah, I see.
So maybe with this slide, so Basti, do you see any let's say ways that this community-driven threat catalog could help us fulfill the ISO 21434 standard? Do you see connections between the standard and the threat catalog?
Well, lucky us that we've prepared the slide like this. Huh? I mean, yes, I do see them. Like in 21434, we have these. I mean, the clauses about like the clause about the continuous cybersecurity activities, for example. I mean, that's already when you talk about the security incident response team, where they are monitoring things. They need to look into what John just described. They need to quickly know about, is that 0-day, like, okay, given that is lowering the feasibility of some attack, what does it actually mean for our overall risk? So in there, we would need to fulfill clause 8. We would need to have such a catalog, or at least to have such the overall challenge, the risks being calculated, recalculated, to assess if that is a bad thing or how bad it is. In the concept phase, we would need it, early on when you're doing conceptions on that, you already need to start varying these things up so that this works in the end. In the post-development phases where already 0 days are coming out, and you already need to rethink what, like, the thing is possibly even not even on the road, but you already need to think about what bugs will be already in there, what security weaknesses, will already be in there once you ship it, and you will need to have some update already then. And clause 15 actually is just the essence that is invoked from all of these parts. That's the Terra process that you have shown to us. So in all these places, we will need to redo the feasibility, modify the feasibility ratings and propagate them through the models to redo the risk calculation. In order to fulfill 21434, we have to do that.
And even just looking, just think about it from a company perspective. You need to know what your risk is at all times. This is the basis of everything. This will give you information about decisions to be made, priority, and so on. And risk assessment is so critical for this. And this threat catalog it's not going to solve the world here. It's just a small part of this, but the point here is that it's going to be open. It's going to be made by the community, for the community, and supported by the community. We need your inputs, and we'll get to that later. A threat catalog always has to be updated continuously based on information coming from the field, intelligence, and so on, even from the development teams as well, that they can give updates, and so other people can also take this into consideration as well. So it has to be current. It needs to be global, so web-based, accessible. It needs to be in a format that's importable, exportable, and transferable, right? It needs to be trusted. So you have a threat catalog, and it's really important to be able to trust this source of information. It's not going to be applicable for every product, for every application. However, it'll be a basis. And even this basis needs to be trusted. So there has to be a process behind here as well. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be, as far as we can, remove as much human or single viewpoint opinion out of the ratings. And this is to be done with technical committees. And as long as we keep the same technical committee or working group, we can provide consistent numbers.
Otherwise, it would be so sad if, based on the Terra, we could see what kind of topic, was the thesis topic of the author of the Terra analysis, right? That would be sad.
Right. And the last advantage here is really that we need a comprehensive threat catalog, right? It's not going to fit every application or product, like I said before. However, it'll be a baseline, and this will allow people to at least delete what they don't need. And then, you can just take what you need out of the catalog, or even compare it to your own catalog and just see what makes sense. So comprehensiveness is to reduce the risk of us missing something.
Okay. Sounds good. Can we see it?
Yes.
Yeah, can we see it, Basti?
We built it. Well, not entirely, but let's have a look at what we built so far towards what you've been describing. So, swoosh, here we are.
Wow, it's pretty.
Is it? Okay, I did my better best. Not just me, but there's a lot of people involved there, which I'm really grateful for. So what we can see here is the threat classes. The catalog of threat classes, and it's living on the Asrg.io side. We can see that these are categorized by the stride categories, which you probably know of. And well, let's rather look into tempering. For example, here I can see, okay, there's a threat class for manipulation of some computation of some chip. And we can see that it's being rated in the 5 attack potential categories that we know from 21.434. So the equipment was rated to be, well, you need equipment of level 1 to perform this attack. You need to be an expert level 2. You need to have this kind of knowledge about the item or component. The elapsed time, well, level 0, not too much. And the window of opportunity, level 1, which all of that calculated together, we can actually already forecast the feasibility level that would be the case if only such an attack would be the only step needed inside an attack path. The whole attack path would have medium feasibility. And well, so much about this maybe. The thing is, so far this is pretty interesting maybe already, but also boring because just looking at it doesn't help a lot. with getting my terras done. So what we've built here is a download button that downloads this for now in some exam format. We're going to come back to this. And now, actually, I would need to have a Terra tool at hand, right? And I hope no one of you is still doing this in Excel, because I can tell you I don't think that's gonna scale. So you need your Terra tool of choice, and well, we already teased you on this one. My Terra tool of choice is of course the one that we're building, luckily
what was the name of that?
Oh yeah, thank you for that. So I'd love to advertise that. So it's the security analyst from we call this Yakindo. And at Itemis, we're building this tool that supports you like specifically in doing terras. And so somehow I would like to have my attack steps now reuse the ratings that we have just seen in the catalog. So I'm just gonna click the import button here, and okay, it seems I downloaded it already a few times. And swoosh, we can see there are the thread classes now showing up here. And if we go a bit here, here we find it again, the manipulation of the computation. And remember, it ended up with a medium feasibility level. And you can look it up again. Okay, K2 was confidential information. So it was considered that for manipulation of that, we actually need to know how the chip works. That makes sense maybe on the general level. Okay, so now that I have it in my tool, let's see how I could end up using it. So if I created an attack step here, I can now say something like it is instantiating a thread class. Because now we didn't rate the step yet, and that's why we are showing a high feasibility rating. That's the worst case. Like if I know nothing, I have to assume it's really highly feasible. And now it's something interesting happening, because that's sort of I'm now sort of searching through the database of the Asrg threads catalog. Right? If I'm typing here, I'm now browsing through the thread classes we have just imported. That's where you say, wow.
Wow.
Thanks for that. So if I would just pick some, we can see that there are some feasibility level now and some ratings, right? Let's do it again. Stare at this part. And if I'm selecting manipulation of computation, we can see the ratings here are appearing. And our tool is actually showing this value is derived from the class of the element. So that we can now have our attack step being formulated without really needing to rethink this over and over again. Whenever I'm doing a manipulation of the computation on the chip, I can reuse this rating from the threads catalog.
And Basti, so that means this attack step is actually inheriting the catalog's feasibility ratings, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay.
We can see it here, and well, I mean, from the catalog, maybe the catalog wasn't really specific for the gateway. You might think now. In this case, in this example, we're now modeling the manipulation of a gateway ECU. Which let's say is an off-the-shelf component. So the part that we looked at before, it doesn't really make sense anymore, right? You don't really need confidential information for that. If it's off the shelf, would be rather restricted. Right? So let's go for that. And now what I'm doing is I'm partially overriding the inherited rating to make it more specifically fitting to the context that I'm running this thread class. This particular attack step this time is running on an off-the-shelf component. That's why let's rather take K1 here instead of K2. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. And everything is recalculated right then and there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really change the resulting level, but if I make a big change, a big step here, you can see it's being recalculated immediately. And I mean, I don't really have an impact connected to this attack step. That's why we don't see a risk. But in another occasion over here, we can actually see how the feasibility rating and the impact level are combined immediately to show us a risk level that is coming out here. So also here, I could make a change. And we can see how the risk level is changing. So yes, that is immediately. We have the formula there.
Very nice.
Okay, let's take a step back and have a look again at what we have been doing here. So first, I went to asrg.io and opened the thread catalog there. And that's already something. That's actually 2 websites that we are opening here. One time, the members portal of the ASRG. And well, we noticed that it's probably good and modern style to have it as a separate application to implement the threads catalog. So that is some Docker container running somewhere. And as Itemis, we have implemented such a catalog editor and providing that one for that container, for that deployment there. Then I clicked on this download button, and we can see that there's a version inside and some release date. So we are prepared for having this frequently updated in that sense as well. And maybe I should say a word about this format here. XSUM, that's something we made up to be a short for an exchange format for security analysis models. So essentially, we aim for a data format that contains all the data that are 21434 related, because we felt like we need something, some standardish way to exchange these kind of data, and we didn't find any, even though there are so many security exchange things already coming over from the IT security. We didn't really find something that suited well for 21434. And then we went there. You might have seen the talk that I gave at ASRG. I think it was in the last year, maybe.
Last year, I think.
Yeah, about OpenXSUM, because we also noticed that it's not really useful if we as Itemis, the vendor of one product on that, is sort of giving out some exchange format. That's not really plausible to be something that establishes as a format that all the tools can talk with each other and all the organizations can use as an exchange format and all that. So this vision, I think, will only fly if you make it open source. That's why we did so. We call this then OpenXSUM. And we went for a couple of partners that are willing to give us not only their logos, but also contribute to this kind of initiative of the dream of having some format that all the people agreed on and all the tools are implementing ideally, which is not like owned by Itemis, but we're just some member and some implementer of that format. That's our dream on this one.
And Basti, if I can jump in here.
Sure.
This is not coming out of some kind of just, well, we're going to create a new format, right? This is coming out of a need from the industry. And if you think in the future, we're going to need to be exchanging not only threat catalogs, right? But we're also going to be able to exchange risk assessment information. We need this in a certain format, whether this is OpenExam or some other crazy format. But the point is here that we as an industry need to have the same exchange format. And this is a great example of such a solution. So Basti and Itemis put this together. And I think it's a great thing, great proposal. And there's lots of partners here, right? So take a look at it, review it, give feedback, be a part of the solution. The idea here is to solve the industry problem, not exactly have a, OpenExam as a new product or anything.
Yeah, true. Actually, people keep asking us about, do you already have a schema here and can you give us more documentation? And we'll feel like, yeah, let's launch the initiative and have the initiative figure that out and agree on something. It's not that we want to sort of, how do you say that, like to decide on that or yet, because we don't feel like we're, we feel like there are a lot of other opinions needed as well. Mm-hmm. We could even think also for, I mean, we're actually implementing conversion from some Excel formats to XAMPP and back. So the threads catalog, right now you cannot download Excel yet, but soonish you will also be capable of downloading this simply as an Excel, or maybe, I like the dream, but the catalog itself, I think, should be also usable if you're using a tool that maybe had a different opinion than OpenExam initiative had. So maybe that's worth mentioning here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we clicked on the download button and downloaded this file, and maybe still, anyway, I would like to give you an insight about what was in that file. It was full of thread classes. Yeah, you heard that. So let's have a look at an example thread class here, which is, yes, still the same example. Lucky me. For example, we saw that it was rated to have an expertise level 2 here. And this format has some sense of name-based references. Yeah, so it's designed to be on precise whenever we need it, but also readable whenever we needed to be understandable. For example, in this case.
This is XML format, right?
Yeah, right now it's XML. We also, I mean, internally for some applications, we figured out that we would rather prefer something like JSON, like the sort of JSON format for security analysis models. We don't mind about the XML or JSON or YAML or whatever it is. We rather care about the meta model behind that. We are, Jonathan, you teased that so good. We are a model-driven company, and that's our DNA. So we really care about discussing the meta model there, and we will for sure figure out a way to map these meta models into XML, into JSON, into I don't know, if a binary format. If you're bored too much, you can do so, I guess. We can also see that the thread class here is configured to be applicable to channels and components, because, I mean, remember, in Stride, spoofing is not really something that makes sense to do on a component. That one you would rather do on channels or data flows, right? So just to give you an impression on what things are contained in this format here. And in fact, at our tool, we have all the things that all the nodes that you can have in security analyst, you can also have as exported as this kind of XAMPP. But we're still in the process of suggesting here how it could look like. I imported it into our tool then, and then we reused the imported thread class. And that's something where I also would like to take another minute to look at what we conceptually have been doing here, to talk about the model behind. So the idea is, well, yeah, first we imported the thread classes and they have been showing up. So the entities of the thread classes, where John has made up some funny naming patterns so that we can identify them easily to be a tampering or a spoofing thread class. So in that catalog, this is the name pattern there. And then we went for the attack step, which is part of our particular Tara project, right? We sort of stepped from the master data level into on this particular item definition and this particular thread analysis, I would go for this particular attack step. And we created it and told it to instantiate one particular thread class. And the model here it's really like sort of a metaphor for object-oriented programming. Remember, like there's these classes and there are the objects, and the objects are sort of inheriting things from the classes. And as soon as the class changes its implementation or changes, in some languages you can do so, right? The objects that are pointing to it, that are instantiating it, will have their properties being changed. That's the semantics we intend to do here in order to enable the challenges and the demands or requirements that John has made up early on. So yeah, that's why we talk about classes, and the attack step could be considered an object of that class, an instance of that. And that's only due, like with this, we think where we'll be capable to implement such a Terra, such a document, and even such a database full of these Terra projects that can be updated for such a long time. I mean, 2144 demands us to keep them for the whole lifetime of a vehicle, which can be up to 15 years or something. From the prototypical car up to the end of life of this car, we need to have some Terras there that are updated. And without threat classes and without a model like this, we don't really. I wouldn't really understand how to get there.
At least Excel based probably doesn't make sense, right?
Oh yeah, I hope that myth was busted by now. That it indeed doesn't make sense. Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are a couple of points in time when you as an organization want to use these Terras. For example, I mean, not only when starting a new automotive Terra, I mean, yes, obviously the assumption behind that is, well, these are terrestrial, these are human, like animals of humankind, they have mundane properties, they are sort of have commonalities, they attack us. So we can assume that, I mean, that's the overall idea of, in general, doing a Terra and doing a feasibility rating. So whenever you do such, you could also have the idea of, well, if I have the same kind of attack in two places in my organization, probably I want to start with a similar consideration from the beginning. So when starting a Terra, I'd rather base this on a catalog, I think. After I did so, while the Terra is living, we might want to pull in the latest updates to see the risk levels change.
This is where like the product itself is not changing, right? Not in the development phase, but this is in the operational phase where actually the environment is changing. So the feasibility ratings are changing over time because threats become more relevant or less relevant as time goes on. The environment in which the product is operating is always changing.
I could imagine that the car manufacturer would rather prefer to not touch this thing at all anymore. After the car is sold, they made their money and they are happy, but you still need to respect that the threat environment is changing, and you need to incorporate these updates into your security considerations.
Right, and if you're a small supplier or something like that, using something like this where it's community supported threat catalog, then you'll be able to get these updates without spending so much effort, right? You just keep importing every day the new updates and then look at your risk assessment at the end and say, have I, based on the new risk or the new threat catalog, have I have a new risk that's not acceptable for me anymore?
Yeah, and that's possible because you can pull in these kind of updates. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Also, there might be new classes of attacks coming up, right? And if they are being created, you can start using them by updating your threat catalog. So you already touched this, John. If you are too small for your own catalog as some small supplier of some maybe off-the-shelf or out-of-context component, I mean, you will need to make some domain-wise specific components. If you're so, specialized to build LiDAR systems or something, you will have also maybe some LiDAR-specific context. But you can actually base a lot on the baseline threats catalog that maybe can grow now. That's at least our vision in the Asrg community. So they would only make minor modifications because they don't have a whole department for creating threat catalogs and monitoring the environment and all that, but rather based on the Asrg community catalog.
Right, and at least at the beginning, now this is all new for all of us, right? That we're implementing these new processes, we're implementing new standards, requirements, and regulations, at least at the beginning here, to have a fighting chance to not only keep up with the demand of maybe OEMs or other suppliers or your entire supply chain, to give you a better, higher quality starting point, right? So this is the idea here.
Oh yeah. And it's also a starting point for the OEMs, possibly. I mean, they will probably do their own tailoring heavily, because they can have a whole department for that. But I'm unsure if it entirely makes sense to start from scratch for all the OEMs, because they also want to incorporate some sort of scene, like knowledge from the security scene, right? Scene knowledge.
Right. And this is kind of, as the threat catalog changes over time, it's changing because of information coming from threat intelligence, right? Information from the field. And OEMs also have this advantage of understanding the change over time, and they can use this to adapt their own catalogs as well. They don't need to necessarily take over the ASRG one, but use it as an input to make the quality of their risk assessments even better.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like to think of this like the Android kernel, right, which has highly customized derivatives, which sometimes works very well and sometimes is controversial, as it seems. But so maybe the example doesn't apply too well then. But if it's, there is some kind of kernel and some kind of common sense of work that you don't want to really entirely redo, but you want to get some input from that to build your own, to base on it. Yeah, that's a picture that I liked. And with all these with all these thoughts, I just wanted to come back to the point: only if both of them are sort of connected to some catalog, that is, or to some knowledge sharing entities somehow, they will be capable of coping with that need that, when you release a new car, you will need to have an updated Terra for the whole lifetime of these vehicles.
Yeah. And even in the future, we can think about opportunities to use baseline threat catalogs as a relationship between different supply chain components, right? It could be that someone is using a baseline and has modified it. There's a, excuse me, that there's an opportunity to make this link between all of the different parties that are providing risk assessments.
Oh yeah. So, I don't really know how yet, but the catalog could be some kind of this joint point that you're referring to. Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That. So we're just drawing visions at some point here, and we don't really have built all of that yet, but we have built some of it, and it's actually already there. If you go to asrg.io/threat-catalog, you can look and do the same things that I've just shown.
Actually, everything you showed today was running live, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was even. I even trusted on the internet connection. Since we're not broadcasting it live, I was hoping to get some second try if needed, but so far we didn't need to. And actually, I didn't show it all yet. You want me to show the second part?
Another demo? Okay, fine.
Yeah. Oh, lucky me.
I'm excited. I want to see it, Busty.
At least some of you is excited. So what I wanted to show you, let's pick up where we dropped our thoughts here. We've been specializing here towards the off-the-shelf ECU, right? So a manipulation of the computation of this gateway ECU, we said it would rather need not strictly confidential and also not confidential information, but only restricted information. And I was just thinking, this is a typical use case that comes sometimes, that we are specializing our attack step onto the context, but are realizing, well, for off-the-shelf components, I will have that, this is going to come again. And now I'm ending up again rating particular attack steps in my Terra. And I'm again, with every attack step based rating, I will build up the maintenance efforts extremely, the long-term maintenance efforts, because that's sort of something that doesn't get automatically updated. Does that make sense so far?
I'm with you at least.
Okay, that's good. Because I would like to make a step back and think of, maybe if we have classes and objects, maybe we can also think of subclasses. So this kind of thing, how about adding a subclass for this for this particular rating that is called, well, let's say something like manipulation of off-the-shelf ECUs. So let me go back to my catalog here, and I'm going to switch from the view-only mode to the mode where, well, let's suggest a change here. I don't think that the Asrg catalog is complete, because it will never be perfect forever. It will only be a snapshot in time. And now maybe let's try to add a new subclass to here. And well, you can see we're in beta. We still need to do some scrolling. And let's call this manipulation of the shelf ECU. And if I add that one, we can see that this is now being a sort of a step deeper in the hierarchy of classes. And we can actually nest them as deep as we want. As deep as the maintainers allow us, at least as the domain, as deep as the domain makes still sense. So it will now be inheriting the feasibility ratings from the manipulation computation thread class.
So this catalog could get really, really big. I mean, if you consider all of the categories and then all of the classes and the subclasses, can you have subclasses?
Sure. You can also have subclasses, by the way.
Oh, okay. So it keeps going and going. You can keep refining and refining to whatever level is necessary.
Well, at the same time, to be honest, I don't know how deep that actually will end up making sense, because the catalog is on a pretty generic level.
Right.
So at some point, probably the maintainers crew will come. The maintainers who have to review my change request will say like, that they think this is too specific to be really useful for the whole community. I guess that will happen. So it will have some ID, and we gave it a name, and we had the idea of overriding some part of it. So in this subclass, let's say it's only restricted knowledge of the item needed. What would be a good rationale for that? John, can you help me out here?
The rating change was to K1, right?
It was
no proprietary information.
Let's say so, not proprietary, maybe knowledge needed. Oh, thought that makes sense? Okay. So we gave even a rationale for this rating as we are used to, hopefully. And also here you can see, actually we're inheriting these values here, but for the newly created thread class, we're currently not showing this well. So bear with us, this is still beta. In terms of what we're displaying here, of course, there should be some still the medium level displayed as we saw it before in the tool. And now I can click on submit changes and I will see the actual, well, the programmers will know this as sort of the diff view, right? This is the changes that I did to the catalog so far. We introduced this new thread class, which is refining manipulation of computation and overriding part of it, which is setting the knowledge of the item or component down to K1. The rationale, okay.
And I think it's really important here, Basti, to point out that there's a comment field, right?
Yeah, sure.
We need, and I'll show you later a little bit about how these changes will be approved and released and how we're doing version management. But the comment field is going to be very important for us to help understand why the change is being made. use the fields that are included in this portal, even the description field as well, for text, acts on, fill it out just like you would do also your Terra, Mora, or risk assessment, so that we can understand and better rate this later.
How about that one? We specialize the manipulation to off-the-shelf ECUs.
Thank you, Basti.
Okay. For the programmers, again, like this is sort of the commit message. If you're, if you're used to Git or so, you will remember a lot of parts of this workflow here. But you don't need to understand Git to submit a change request here and give it a comment that helps the maintainers to understand what you're trying to change here, what you're trying to improve on the catalog. So guess what? I'm just submitting this one now, and have fun with that, John. Yeah, it's also we don't really show the success message right now, but by the way, point in time that you, the audience, are watching this, we probably have that fixed. There's still a lot of changes here. Also, I would like to make these are the 5 categories that you know from the 21434, but we use slightly different abbreviations here. And I would like to just make them match the abbreviations from the example in the 21434, so that it's even more obvious and screaming at your eyes. This is the attack potential rating that you know from there.
Yeah, it's not perfect yet. We're still in beta, and we definitely need your guys' feedback here, right? What else can we change to make this better? Let us know.
Oh, yes, please. So that was the second part of the demo. And also here, I would like to recap this quickly. We start, conceptually in my workflow, I'm starting probably in the tool and doing a particular Terra when I'm coming to mind. Oh, this should be rated differently. I'm overrating in a text step. And every time I do this, that is sort of a good point in time to pick up and wonder like, do I need to do this kind of rating? And will I need to do this thought a second time? Or would someone need to redo this kind of thought in some other place? And then I could, since we answered this with yes, we thought of there should be a dedicated thread class for this one. And then depending on the level of abstraction, maybe this is something rather for the company-wide threads catalog, or even for the very general ASRG catalog. And since for now we only have that one, I guess it's it was a good a lucky us that we managed to find some thread class that is indeed generic enough to apply to the overall security scene, so that we could demo my feature here. Yeah. So allow me to explain a bit more technical details about how we submitted this change request. As you know, I explained in the beginning, these are sort of 2 separate websites, and I know that you folks are into security. So let me ensure you one thing by telling you that this is some Docker container that is running the catalog editor from Itemis, and it's using the post message API to let the 2 frames communicate. So only inside the front end, the thread catalog was at the point when I clicked the submit button, communicating to the ASRG front end code, to the ASRG frame. Please, someone wants to submit a change request, please take care of this one. And then the front end of the ASRG could take the existing session and do the put request to its backend. And that allowed us to, to do, we do data minimalism as useful as it makes sense, so that the catalog doesn't need to know anything about your ASRG user session, login status, all these things. The catalog doesn't know anything about that. And with this architecture, we could realize that.
It was really important to maintain the privacy while, of course, ensuring the authentication of the member who is submitting the request.
Yeah, I mean, it will allow you as a maintainer to come back to the people and even ask questions and all that, right? You can even send notifications regarding the status of the change request. And for that, you need some contact details for them.
Well, and I don't need change or submitted change requests from 4 million bots, right? It has to be authenticated ASRG users.
Oh yeah, I understand that. So actually that is open beta, very beta, but beta, and available now. And in the middle of the year, 21.4.3.4 will come and ask where Terra. Then we can where Terra. Then we can say hopefully that we can say like here it is. We got all of them done, because that's the deadline, right? Mid of 2022. That's mid of this year, like sort of half a year from when we're recording this one. You need to be done with a lot of these. That's a strict timeline. And so at Itemis, we built this and want you to try it out, because we think, even though we hope that we're accelerating and helping you out with getting out of that challenge, we think that this is just a tiny bit of it, and we need your feedback, and we're really keen also to look into not just we won't look into your change requests domain-wise, like the change requests that I just submitted there. They were rather ending up on some technical committee that knows more about security than I do. I'm a software engineer rather. But rather we are interested also in the change requests that are rather on the features that you would like to see, and on the change requests, on the workflow, on the tool that we have been building here. Because I would think that probably we don't, you never hit it right on the top on the first try.
That's right. And I think this is really important to say. This is the first step. It's the first beta. It's open. Please use it. Be critical about it. Let us understand where you see there are other use cases for it. Just give us feedback. Constructive feedback, respectful, but of course we need your feedback.
You can forward the other feedback to me. I have fun reading it then.
I will put Basti's home phone number at the end of the presentation.
Thank you.
It's not perfect yet. We're working on it. We have a roadmap. I'll show you in a second. And it's non-application specific. So please keep this in mind. You're going to download the threat catalog and be like, what good is this for me, right? Well, you have to keep in mind that there's so many different levels or abstraction levels of a product in automotive. Function, system, ECU, hardware, software. And to be agnostic, to make the threat catalog at least applicable to all the different levels, we have to keep this in mind, and to keep it very general, at least at the first phase. So just keep this in mind. It's not application specific. It's not going to fit towards your gateway or towards your wheel tire pressure monitoring sensor, whatever, but we will get there. So it's open beta. Go check it out.
So how do you ensure then, if it's not application specific, maybe you provide some other value that you can make sure with that ASRG catalog idea?
It's a really good point. So how do I trust this data that's coming into the threat catalog, right? Because anybody can make a submission, submit a change request, and what happens after that? So I have to admit, we went out, developed a process for this, some roles, and even the tooling together with Itemis to make sure that the data that is in the threat catalog is versioned, is maintained. When you do submit a change request, that there is a process behind it here. And if you look here on the right side, it's actually written out in a nice little flow chart here. Someone is going to submit a request. The request is going to be sent. Right now, it's sent by email. So
sorry for that.
Completely open and honest, but we get an email, and this comes into the technical committee. And the technical committee is a group of people that are that are reviewing all of these changes, that they have experience in the industry. They don't have all the same experience, right? And to be honest, we're also looking for additional people to join the technical committees to help bring in also different viewpoints. But that aside, we get all of these change requests, we review them, we do a release process, and either the change is accepted, and then we do a merge change request, and ultimately it's put into the published threat catalog and versioned and released, or the change is rejected, a reason is given, email will be sent back, and the threat catalog, of course, is remained unchanged, right?
And I like this one. And whatever happens there, as a contributor, I have to accept whatever John has decided.
Not John, but the technical committee, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, actually. So even worse, whatever the whole committee has decided upon my smart ideas.
So people are looking at this and rating and giving feedback. So please think about your submissions before you do send them over. As much as we love to get feedback, we also need change requests that are realistic, right? So this is the process.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we have the time if I can show one more thing here.
Another demo?
Yeah, yes, please.
Sorry, Basti, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Go for it, Basti.
Yeah, thanks God I have Jonathan Broad with me, who's who's totally independent.
cheering you on.
Yeah. So okay. So what I still wanted to show you is that's going to be a quick one. It's rather inspirational. When we are talking about the far vision. I mean, let's imagine we originally the threat catalog was even stricter and said like you need strictly confidential information about it. You didn't see that scrolling going wrong here? No, you didn't. Here we go. So maybe we see here that we want to go for strictly confidential information. And then the threat catalog has changed, and I would like to do the very same thing that I showed in the beginning or in the first demo, but in a different way. So what if we don't even need the file to be downloaded for that, but if I rather just have a button that says like just pull the changes from remote catalog, and internet is going well. Then we can see it is just downloading the file and importing this in the background. And while this is technically not so much of wizardry, I think workflow-wise, we can start thinking about how would that look like if our Terra tools would then be, API-wise integrated with such a catalog.
Really powerful.
We could make up notifications showing up. There is the Asrg maintainers crew has just pushed a new update. Click this button to update your threats catalog with their update it to their new version. These kind of features we could build. We could even go much further to have this even done, unattended. Just have some CI server do this and do recalculations and consider if he's waking up someone and making a call because things seem to be very risky right now. We could think of these things, even though I don't entirely know how to build that. I'd like us to think and step towards these.
That's Basti. I mean, you're talking about the future here. And this is all the first step in that direction, because ultimately we need to automate these processes. We need to have the tooling to develop that type of capabilities.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. I think so too. That already sounds like you're heading for the roadmap, huh?
Oh yeah, actually. So this this application that Itemis and Asrg have worked together on, it's currently in beta, like we've said many times. And try it out, see how it works, see how it doesn't work, be a part of the solution, right? But this is not the last step. This is only the first step. And we're going to work on bringing additional features and functions into this for the maintainers, right?
No more need for you to only copy this from emails. I promise. Someday you will not need to have this as an email, but maybe as a real pull request.
So to automate some of these processes so that the review processes, that the release processes are then authenticated, that they're signed. Also that we think about additional, how could this threat, or which is it a technology? Is it a what type of component is it affecting or could affect? So we're continue developing the current status of the threat catalog. And then we're going to move into the next kind of generation. Because ultimately what we're discussing here is sets of threats, which are a set of feasibilities, right? How feasible is my threat? And then ultimately our goal as security engineers, as hackers, penetration testers, it doesn't matter, is to reduce those threats. And so these controls, the next step is to bring in the controls catalog or measures catalog. And this measures catalog would then have in it all of the different technologies, all of the different solutions that might be available on the market, with a proposed feasibility, of course, right? And the link to the threats. And what's the power of this is that then you can start to see when you're doing a design, or if you're doing mitigation, you can start to see what types of solutions are available, not only on the markets or open in open source solutions, but to see what options there are. And then you can look and work on scenarios that fit best for your product or for your ECU or whatever it might be.
Sure. So if I would be really understanding security and like as a from the hacking perspective, or the if I would be really not only building tools, but let's say an intrusion detection system, that would be actually some solution that we could sort of list here and have sort of prepared as a really as a sort of really describing its use cases and what threat classes it's really addressing, right?
That's right. And that's going to be the power of this catalog in the future, is not only to identify what risks or what threats might be in your product, but also what solutions could be implemented to help mitigate that, or negative feasibility, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm. Because the control, if it's intact, it's going to possibly reduce the feasibility of the threat that it's mitigating. Right. That's why we have it.
And a control could be a product or service provided from the market, but it also could be something like TLS implementation of, or TLS version 1.2 or 3 or 2.0, whatever it might be. But these different technologies, which are existing open source, they also need to be considered as easy. Easy implementation is not the right word, but a potential solution to an existing threat.
And it would be the missing link. It could even sort of have some sort of, for this given threat classes, we know about these kind of controls, control classes that would sort of allow us to mitigate this one. That's really cool.
If you think about this in the future too, if you're an OEM or a supplier who has a catalog of existing solutions, then you can start to think about how these solutions best make sense to cover your risk. So you can run different solution scenarios if you're doing model-based risk assessments. And ultimately, you don't want every OEM, every supplier keeping a control catalog, right? So it makes sense also to bring this outside of the companies into a nonprofit or an organization that's maintaining and managing that information.
Oh, yet another reason for having this at the ASRG side, in general, at a cross OEM, cross company side that is, non-commercial and non-poisoned by own interests.
That's right. Where profit is not considered. And so it doesn't have to be ASRG. Actually, to be honest, we'd be happy and willing to work with other companies or solutions that have the same goals that we do to provide a solution, right? So keep this in mind. The idea here is to bring value to the industry. And ultimately, our long-term goal is real-time risk management, right? This is my dream. I know it's a strange dream, but ultimately, we want the capability as OEMs, as suppliers, as whatever, to understand how much risk we have for our products at any time in the field. And this is powerful. This is where it comes into the effect that if you do have real time, and real time is subjective or objective here, how often, but the point here is that you can use this information to reduce the risk for your company by understanding how much risk you have in your product or technical products in the field and make changes, adaptations, prioritization, decisions to reduce that faster, right?
That minute again that you've been setting as a goal for us.
That's right. I think depending on where we are, we're talking about weeks, months right now. My goal, of course, is less than minutes, and love to see this as a solution towards that goal.
So, John, you're asking so much about us doing something, and I wonder, if my mother is watching our talk here right now and she's saying okay, she would like to contribute something, what could she be doing? How could she indeed be contributing something? I wonder.
Yeah, actually, the great question, Basti, because these solutions, these use cases, this information only works with the support of the community, right? And if you jump to the next slide, I think it's really important that everybody understands this is not an ASRG issue. This is not a OEM issue or a supplier issue. This is our issue. We drive the cars. Yeah, our families drive the cars. So the point here is it's important to contribute to the catalog, submit changes, give us feedback, submit or contribute to the project. Become a member of the technical committee. Help us review. Be a part of the vetting process. To open exam.
Please, someone take it over and drive that community.
Yeah, or not even take it over, but drive this. Look for the opportunities here and the different use cases as a solution.
Yeah.
And I think ASRG might be in a great position also to drive open exam. But I think we discussed this maybe later, huh? And then, of course, contribute to ASRG. I think everybody's here in this webinar enjoying the content, being a part of the solution, being a part of the organization. Contribute back to ASRG. Come join or come be a member, come be a leader, create a new location. It's really nice because ASRG enables you to create a name for yourself in the automotive security community, network further, and also collaborate on projects and create your own ASRG location if that's what you want.
That sounds really big. Of a dream. Yeah, let's go there.
All right. I think we can go to the next slide.
Oh, gee, looks like we're already at the end.
No, we're not. We're not. Please, I have one more thing. I would know.
Oh,
It's
all
not a
right.
demo, John. Don't worry. It's not a demo. No, I just wanted to point out that if you like the also the tool, the Terra tool that I showed you, the offline tool that was on my machine, you are totally welcome to go to that URL that is written here at the bottom. It's also going to be in the video description as. And if you go there, we're gonna just, we agreed upon that we're gonna just give you an evaluation license of the tool. You just need to click there, and yeah, we will be happy to share that with you, because also that's in our interest as Itemis to spread the word on how Terra tools can actually work. Yeah, to be honest, marketing made me say that, but that's indeed my opinion. Yeah. Now I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you, Basti, and I think that's it from our side then. Yeah, we hope you've all enjoyed our little talk here, and we'd like to thank you all very much for joining us from probably around the world, from multiple continents. So again, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next ASRG talk.
Have a good evening.
Goodbye.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Ciao.